Yeah, please start.
Hello, everyone. Today, we are diving into a topic that is not just a buzzword in the corporate world, but truly a game changer in leadership and business: empathy. We all might have heard about empathy being that nice to have, but here's the thing: empathy is that powerful edge that a leadership should have. Especially when leaders model it authentically, it becomes a true game changer. It transforms teams and boosts results and even shapes the company's culture. Today, we'll explore how empathy, when modeled at the top, drive real corporate results through authentic conversations. Plus, I'll also share stories, research, and practical tips on how we can start using empathy right away. Let's start by getting into the heart of the matter. What do we really mean when we talk about empathy at work? When most leadership conversation tend to focus on things like vision, strategy, driving results, they are all important for sure. But the real question is it very critical for us to have empathy and drive the conversations through empathy? So, what does it really mean to be an empathetic leader today? Now we'll ask this question: what empathy means in workplace, right? Empathy at workplace isn't just about being nice or friendly. It is much deeper than it is being said. It is the ability to understand genuinely and relate others to what they are going through in their own lives, their emotions, their perspectives, and even their daily challenges at work. It is about imagining what things look like from their point of view and responding in ways that people help being felt seen, felt heard, and even felt respected. And this goes way beyond the surface level kindness. Empathy builds real relationships, creates trust, and even fosters a space where people feel psychologically safe. And when that happens, people naturally give their best to their bosses and organization. Okay, now let's break it down. Empathy, sympathy versus compassion and the action around it. Let's clear up that confusion around these terms because they get tossed around when we talk about empathy a lot. Now, let's start with sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel sorry for someone, but you're kind of watching from the sidelines and keeping that distance with that person. That is sympathy. Now, empathy is slightly different. It's different because it is when you feel with someone, you listen, you connect emotionally with that person, and then you respond with care. That's empathy. Now, there's a third layer, which is called compassion, the compassionate action towards the other person. That's empathy in motion. You don't just understand, you do something about it. And that is where a true leadership action happens with empathy. True, great leaders might show all the three at different times, but empathy and compassionate action, that's where the real magic happens. Now let's look at why leaders care about empathy. Why should they do it anyways? Here's the big one. Empathy builds trust. And trust is the most valuable currency in any organization. When people trust their leaders, they first feel safe. They start speaking more. They try doing new and different things. They recover from their setbacks quicker. They collaborate more openly, which means they're going to stay longer in the organization with the boss. In fact, the research shows that empathy leads to better retention, which means people less likely to leave the organization when they truly feel felt, understood, and appreciated. The second thing is more innovation. When people feel safe, they're more likely to share their ideas, challenge the norms, and even solve problems creatively. The third thing is stronger collaboration. Empathy helps resolve conflicts more smoothly and helps teams work even better. And the fourth one is that higher engagement. People bring more of themselves to work, and this means better performance across the organization. So, those are those top four things which will drive empathy in your organization. To quote Dr. Tracy Bower in Forbes, empathy is a fast becoming the most important leadership skills. You also knew demonstrating empathy is positive for people, but the new research demonstrates its importance for everything from innovation to retention. Now let's move on and talk about a story. Let me tell you about a real life example that blew me away. Zoho, the tech company, and its CEO, Sridhar Vembu. This guy didn't just say empathy was important, he built his entire company around it. Not just in the slogans or values or the poster, but in real, tangible ways that transformed the company's culture. So then let's do look at what did he do at Zoho. First, he set up offices in rural areas, not just for cost saving, but to provide the real opportunities to people who normally get left out in the tech game. He brought jobs to places where people could stay closer to their families and communities. Isn't it beautiful? The second thing that he did was to empower local communities. He encouraged employees to serve and mentor others, nearby making empathy a part of his daily life, not just his work. The third thing is that Zoho created Zoho schools. No fancy degrees needed. If you are talented, Zoho will train you and hire you. That's inclusive leadership in action. And he also spoke with transparency. He delivers tough news himself. No hiding behind that corporate speak. That, that honesty that he had built the trust in his organization. And he had constantly put people before profits. We all know what transpired during pandemic, right? While others were laying off, Zoho prioritized their employee safety and job security. He led with humility and long-term thinking. He talks very openly about learning from mistakes, striving to growth, and choosing patience over quick wins. And most importantly, he didn't force empathy as a top down rule. He modeled it himself and trusted that others would pay forward when they did it. And that's what happened in Zoho. When he at the top level modeled empathy throughout his organization, his next level leaders took it forward and they paid it forward in the organization. And then this is how empathy ripples through an organization. This is what's so powerful. When leaders like Wembu model empathy authentically, it doesn't just stay with them at the top. Middle managers see it and then they start copying it. Teams follow suit. Employees start supporting each other in a way that is very beautiful. Before long, it becomes a norm, not just an exception. That's called a ripple effect or even emotional contagion. If you want a sciencey term, emotional contagion is what it is. That's how a single leader's value can end up reshaping the entire culture. Zoho went from chaos of 2020 just like everyone else, but instead of barely surviving, they doubled their user base in 2 years from 30 million to 60 million users. Wow, that's a transformation, isn't it? That's the kind of business impact empathy can really have. So, what we can learn from this: empathy is not a weakness. It is not too soft for business as well. It is not something you put in a box, only open it during a mental health week. It is one of the most strategic and powerful tools a leader can use to drive change, performance, and loyalty. Now, here's the kicker: it's completely within your control. You don't need to have a new policy, you don't have to have a bigger budget. You just can start showing up differently from Monday onwards. Ask better questions, listen more deeply, respond with care, and lead from your heart as much as your head. That's all it takes to become that empathetic leader. Because when you lead with empathy, the kindness that is real and consistent, and with that, you can absolutely change everything around you. So, whether you're leading a team, running a business, or just trying to be a more conscious colleague, let's remember this: empathy isn't just being nice. It's necessary skill that transforms workplaces from pressure cookers to thriving ecosystems. And if we model it well, like our leader Sridhar Vembu and many others, we create ripple effects that outlasts even us. And that's how true ripple effects are built because of empathy. Now let's move on and look at certain practical ways in which we can cultivate and model empathy. Now let's start with $1 million question, shall we? How do you actually do empathy as a leader, especially when your calendar is packed, pressures high, deadlines are blooming? Because let's just face it, empathy sounds really great in theory, but in real life, we all have to hit the targets, emails overflowing, team members have different personalities, and somewhere in between, we are expected to show up emotionally. So today, I'm going to give you something very real. 5 practical ways you can cultivate and model empathy as a leader. Not just someday, but right now. Even with the pressure, with the deadlines blooming, even with the stress that we're all undergoing as a leader. Now, the first tip is that start with regular check ins that go deeper. I want you to think about the last time you asked somebody, "How are you?" Now, think about what did they say? Fine, busy, all good. Does this find or sound familiar to you? Now, here's the thing: those are all those surface level check ins, and they don't build empathy. They just maintain politeness and a connection. So, let's try this instead. In your next one on one, let's swap out those autopilot questions with a more meaningful, deeper questions. How are you really doing today? What's something that has been challenging you this week? What's something you're proud of yourself lately? What's weighing you down in your mind today? So, can you look at the difference from how are you to how are you really doing today? When you ask these questions with curiosity and intention, you open the door to an honest dialogue. You create space for people to feel seen and not just managed. And over time, these check ins shift from the tone of leadership from transactional to transformational. Just with the questions, can we believe it? A leader which is more transactional to transformational. If we can start regular check ins and not at the surface level, but at a deeper level. The second practical tip for all of us is to share your own vulnerability. Here's something I've learned: empathy isn't just a performance, it's a partnership. That means it is not just about understanding others, it is also about letting yourself seen. And that takes vulnerability. When you share your own doubts, struggles, moments of growth, you're not just about being a weak person, but you're truly becoming a human. Now, imagine this: a team member opens about being overwhelmed. You could say, I understand, and move on. Or you could say, you know what? I remember feeling the same way exactly the last quarter. There were moments I really felt questioned if I could handle it. And here's what helped me. You see the sudden shift, right? From telling that, hey, I do understand, and then moving on to sharing our own experience and telling that last quarter I exactly felt the same way. And here's how I handled it. That could help you. And this absolutely shifts the energy from being a transactional leader to becoming a transformational leader. Now you've moved from authority to ally, from I have known all the answers to we are figuring this out together. And this particular way of handling things builds trust faster than the motivational speech could ever be. So, the second topic is to share your own vulnerability. Now, let's move on to the third tip: practice active listening. Now, let's talk about the heartbeat of empathy: listening. Not just hearing words, but being the true ally and being present with the other person. We all think we are good listeners, but if we are being honest, a lot of us are just waiting for our turn to talk. And here's a simple framework I would love for all of us to truly and empathetically start listening. And I call it the three R's. The first one is recognize. Recognize the emotion. It sounds like we are feeling frustrated. It sounds like you are feeling frustrated. It sounds like you're devastated. It sounds like you're disgusted about this policy. So you start recognizing the emotion in the other person. The second R means reflect. To show understanding that makes sense, especially with a tight timeline, you have to just show that understanding. It makes sense, especially that the project is approaching very fast. It makes sense to what you're feeling. The third one is to respond. Respond to the case with care and clarity. It could sound like, let's figure out a way moving forward together. And that's the three R's. It starts with recognizing the other person's emotion. It's as simple as telling, hey, I see the frustration coming from you, especially with the project deadlines coming around. And then reflect to show the understanding. Yeah, it really makes sense that you're frustrated about the project deadline, especially that we're having a tight deadline. And the third one is to respond with care and clarity. It's not just telling, this is what you'll have to do, but it is about telling, let's figure this out together moving forward. And that's three R's to truly and actively listen. Notice that you're not fixing everything. You're simply creating a space for someone to be heard, to be understood, and to be supported. And that's empathy in action. So, what really happens is that if you create that space, in that space, people feel safe. And where there is safety, there's creativity, there's a royal loyalty, and then there is a real connection. And that's active listening with three R's. Now let's move on to the fourth topic: invite feedback and admit mistakes. And this is a big one. Empathetic leaders don't pretend to be perfect. They're honest about their blind spots. They know themselves. When you admit a mistake or ask for feedback, you're not lowering your credibility as a leader. Instead, think about it. You're raising the bar for authenticity. Now, let's imagine you're telling your team as a leader, it's safe to not to have it all figured it out. We just grow here. Now, try saying things like, I think I missed something very important in that conversation. What's your take on it? Or you could also tell, help me understand how that landed for you. You're checking in with the person. How is the conversation going? What could I have done differently? So, these as leaders, what happens is that you're checking in with your team, you care for their responses, you care for what they actually think, and more importantly, you tell that as a leader, I don't have all the answers. Let's figure this out together. And that's inviting feedback and admitting mistakes as a leader. When these simple statements are spoken by a leader, they do two things very powerfully. One, they show humility. The second thing is that they invite dialogue by their own team members. And when your team sees you doing that, they feel safer doing it themselves. How about the teams talk that, hey, I made this mistake? How about team talks to each other that, hey, I would love for you to share with me what is a take for you? Hey, I don't have that answer. Shall we figure this out together? Imagine the teams talk to each other in this language because culture doesn't change through policy. It changes through modeling. And that model has to be the leader that we are. Now, moving to the last one, which is a fifth one, celebrate emotional wins, not just business outcomes. Sounds quite different, right? We all are very used to celebrating the performance and the business outcomes, the KPIs that we have achieved. How about celebrating emotional wins? We, let's say we have closed a deal, we have hit a target, a project is delivered. We all celebrate such performances. How about emotional wins? A team member who had a difficult conversation with grace, someone who bounced back from a tough setback in their life or at professional arena, a new hire who asked a vulnerable question in a team meeting. These moments are gold and they deserve appreciation. Why? Because they reinforce the culture that you are trying to build. They say, this is what matters here. We don't just value results, we value courage, we value resilience, we value emotional intelligence. So the next time you see someone showing up with heart, you say it out loud as a leader. And that validation becomes a fuel for individuals and for culture. Now, here's what I want you to walk away with today. Empathy isn't about being soft, it's about being strong enough to show up fully for yourself and for others. You don't need extra time, extra hours, or even those extra mind space. You just have to be intentional at certain moments. A better question, a pause before we listen, and even the willingness to be real. So when you lead that way, people just don't follow you, they trust you. And that trust is the very foundation for everything from performance to loyalty to innovation to culture. So, tomorrow, when you talk or walk into a meeting or even pick up that phone, just try one of the practices that we have mentioned. Ask a deeper question. Share a small struggle that you are going through yourself. Reflect someone's emotion back to them. Admit one thing you could have done better and celebrate a win that is done emotionally. And watch what really happens next because leadership isn't just top to down, it's inside out. It's that most powerful ripple we all can start creating, and it starts with empathy. It starts with asking, hey, how are you really doing today? Now let's look at how do we build empathy into the leadership systems. So far what we have seen is how do we start empathy, let's say starting from Monday, and show up as a leader, and people will look at you and start modeling, and that becomes a culture, that becomes a ripple effect. So far that's what we've seen. Now let's move on and look at how to build empathy into the leadership systems. Now, empathy isn't that one off conversation, it is a leadership muscle and a system that needs to be designed in every single day. In the previous episode, we spoke about how Satya Nadella did transform Microsoft when he took over in 2014 as a CEO. What did he do? He just didn't change things. He built culture every single day into the system, and that transformed the way Microsoft was operating. And similarly, today we will explore empathy as a personal practice. But in reality, leadership isn't just about how you feel, it's about how your systems behave. If empathy only exists in moments of crisis and kindness, it's not just enough. We must build empathy into our systems, into how we lead, how we review, how we reward, and how we grow with people. And let's look at four practical frameworks that will help empathy, a visible and a measurable system which has been formed in your culture, in your organization. So let's move on to number one framework, cognitive, effective, and behavioral empathy. Now, empathy is more than just a feeling, it has a structure, and you can lead through all these three layers. Cognitive empathy, to understand someone else's experience, right? That's cognitive empathy. The next one is affective empathy. You feel with them, along with them. And the third one is behavioral empathy. You take action along with that. You remember what we spoke about sympathy, empathy, and compassionate action. So, this is something that we're looking at various levels. First is understanding someone's feelings or experience. Next is to actually start feeling with them. And the third one is to take action because you are the leader. Let's look at an example. A team lead noticed a burnout during the peak project season. She didn't just feel bad for the team, she understood the cause and acknowledged their exhaustion and gave them the time off. And that's empathy in action across all levels. What happened? She understood the cause. That's being cognitive empathy. She acknowledged their exhaustion. She understood why it has led the team to burnout. That's effective empathy. And the third one is when she gave the time off, that's behavioral empathy, which means taking action because of what has happened. So, what we can do as a quick takeaway is that in your one on ones, ask what might be going, what might be going on behind the scenes for this person. How can I step in as a leader to act with that person? That could be your leadership move when it comes to the three levels of empathy. First is to try and understand what's happening. The second one is to take that small action as a leader for that person to be getting out of it. Now that's first framework. Now let's move on to the second framework. The three R's, similar to what we saw in active listening. And these three R's are recognize, reflect, and respond. This framework comes from healthcare and education. And it is a powerful structure from building empathy into conversations. Let's start with recognize. Is someone quiet or off track or unusually different or feeling distance? That's the first step of recognizing the signals of the team members. The second one is to see what's happening. It could be a very simple conversation asking, hey, I've been noticing you a little off lately. What's really happening? That's reflecting to see what is happening. And the third R is respond with care. Offer space, offer your presence, offer resources to take care of that situation for that particular person. Let's look at an example, shall we? Let's say a manager sees that a team member's unusually withdrawn. She gently says, hey, you've not been yourself of late. Do you want to talk about it? Let's say when she learns about a family crisis that the person is going through, she adjusts the workload and checks on the person regularly. And that's powerful, right? Imagine the way the other person would have felt. And that's a great leadership move. And what do we do right now from, let's say, starting Monday? Let's train our people around us with this framework of peer support and daily interactions with each other. Look at the cues of emotional distress or emotional change that a person is going on, reflect back with questions as to what is happening, try and understand, and most importantly, respond with care, offer them with support, daily check-ins, daily interactions. If there has to be workload which needs to be adjusted, so be it. And that will be empathy in action. Now with that, we will move on to the third topic, which is self-report, our observation and feedback loops. Empathy isn't just felt, it can be tracked. We did talk about how feedback has to be a daily action for leaders, how it could be micro conversation and it can change the entire culture of the organization. Now, moving it to this episode, empathy, it can be tracked. Great leaders ask, how often do I pause and reflect on my empathetic behaviors? What patterns do I observe in my team's energy and need? What feedback do I get or avoid about how people feel supported? Now, let's take a quick look at an example. A senior leader rolls out wellness initiative and then holds a feedback session. He asks in the feedback, how are these changes affecting you? Are they helping or are they simply adding pressure? Let's say the team opens up offering tweaks that can we make the policies truly helpful? And you look at that feedback which has resulted in you knowing that the wellness plan that you have initiated as a leader isn't really helping. You going and asking for a feedback, people are actually opening up and telling that, hey, can the policies be more helpful? And that's a true feedback that we can receive. And what's one action that we all can take starting Monday? Build regular feedback movements in your team rhythm, not just annual reviews. Start building feedback as an everyday conversation. And it has to be a habit that has to be inbuilt into the conversations that a leader has with their team members. And now let's move on to the fourth framework, contextual and authentic engagement. Empathy without context can actually feel fake. How many of us have come across people who just check in at the surface level and it doesn't go deep? If empathy is carried out without context, we may actually risk ourselves from sounding fake. We can't just copy paste one response to every situation. As leaders, we need to start adjusting them for the culture, personal style, team dynamics, environment, and the timing in which we are. Let's take an example. The usual case that we all talk about, pandemic. During the pandemic, Ring Central introduced caring days, extra paid time off to acknowledge the emotional fatigue that the team members were going through. It wasn't just a perk, it was a culturally tuned, authentic signal of empathy that the leaders of the organization was trying to adapt. That really worked well. When creating or updating policies, let's ask ourselves, does this meet people where they are? Or am I even assuming that it will meet? So, constantly asking ourselves about the policies that we are working on, the frameworks that we are putting out, is it really helping people? And that's being contextual and creating an authentic engagement. So let's recap empathy by design. We looked at four frameworks. First one was cognitive, affective, and behavioral. What it means: think, feel, and act. Use all in the decision making because that's the various levels in empathy. The second framework that we saw is recognize, reflect, and respond, similar to the 3 R's in the active listening. Notice, validate, and respond. This is a great tool for you to have your one-on-ones and coaching moments with your team members, or even having conversations. The third framework that we saw is self-report, observe, and feedback. And what does it really mean? It means to reflect, observe, and improve as leaders. Build continuous learning loops, ask for feedback, and change yourself for the betterment of the organization. And the fourth one is contextual, authentic engagement. Tune empathy to the context. Adapt practices, policies authentically because they are there to serve people. And if we can bring in that context, that will be really a great change that we can bring in. Now, culture is what happens when you're not there in the room. Systems are how you scale empathy, and it is in the room even when you're not there. Now, let's move on to what we have summarized through the time. Now, thank you all for staying with me till the end. As we come to close, I want to leave you with something very simple yet powerful. Empathy isn't just a soft skill, it is a core leadership strength. It is what that bridges gap between the authority and the trust, between being that manager and becoming that leader that people will remember you. So today we've explored how empathy can be practiced intentionally and not just felt. Through the cognitive, affective, and behavioral lens, you now know empathy. It is not just feeling with someone, it is also understanding and taking that thoughtful action for the others. We walked through that 3 R's: recognize, reflect, and respond. It's a beautiful way you can ground your leadership in awareness, validation, and action. We all don't have to wait for crisis to be empathetic. We can simply begin with a question as simple as, how are we really doing today? And then we looked at self reporting, observation, and feedback because empathy is a leadership muscle. The more you reflect and seek feedback, the stronger and stronger it becomes. And importantly, we talked about those contextual, authentic engagement because your empathy is only as effective as it is genuine. The team will start feeling when it is real. If there is no contextual part of the empathy, then it starts becoming just the namesake or the fake empathy that it could ever be. So I want to close with a reminder: empathy doesn't require you to have all the answers. It asks only that you show up with presence, curiosity, and care. And whether you lead 5 people or 50,000 people, lead with being a human being first. And that's where real transformation happens. And now, as we step out of this space today, I invite you all to do only one thing: choose that one person, maybe in your team, your family, or even your colleague, and apply one of the empathy tools that we have discussed in the next conversation. It could be recognize, reflect, and respond, act with care. It could be as simple as that. And you will be surprised to see how something as small as asking a deep question can shift the entire culture of your team. And now, thank you for leading with heart and being a part of this conversation today. Let's start building workplaces, not a world with empathy on the surface level, but becoming that world with empathy at a very deep level. Thank you for staying with me for so long. Let's start building empathetic workplaces and empathetic families. Do we have any questions?
Thank you, Kavina. It was really wonderful the way you shared about empathy. I think,
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Shabana.
Kavina.
yeah, I think
Thank you, Kavina. I think as far as empathy is concerned, my workplace is doing a good job because now I'm working with National Cancer Society and they really empathize and how to create empathy with how to get the siblings to empathize with you in a good way. You're not asking for sympathy, but parents are getting old and they shouldn't trouble parents. And when it's their own home, so mm, they shouldn't be invited. They should come. They should call parents and they come by self. Knowing that one of my caregivers, my senior caregiver, is off today, my sister, my mother decides to call my sibling when she knows they are busy. So um, I don't know whether to empathize or whether to feel sadness, empathize or feel, because at the end of the day, my mom is gonna get tired and her um um she's just recovering from her health issues, and I am really concerned about my mother,
Mhm.
and knowing that they are not concerned at all, especially my sister, they are not concerned. So
I get you, Rajman. Thank you for asking that question, which is very deep and which runs inside the family. How can I get my sibling to be empathetic towards my parents? I totally understand. Rajman, one thing that I can say is that when it comes to be it families or the teams, it all operates the same way, right? It's like a set of people who deeply care for each other comes together. In case you find that your sibling could be even more empathetic, then you start modeling empathy at a very grassroots level so that your sibling will be
so
able to
that
see what
no,
how are
so
you treating.
because right now I love my parents and caregivers so much. Something happened that me and my sister not talking with each other. So that's why. And she's too busy, and the minute I say something, it will erupt. So I choose not to say anything. I'm like nice, but I don't. I'm like nice in a nice way, but I'm not like choosing to be attached and phone calls every day. I've given up on that. And she also, being the eldest, she doesn't. Why don't she start first? You're 50 and I'm 40. 40, so you should start first. No matter how busy you are, you should start first. The question is not my parents. The question is with me.
With
Like,
you, okay.
they don't.
Okay.
She doesn't empathize with me. Hard.
I understand. Then if that's the case, then even if you show empathy, you getting back the non-empathetic side. That's what you mean, right? So you've tried your side of modeling empathy in the house.
Tried
Then I
everything.
would then I would say, Rajwin, start having conversations, very open conversations, and start telling them how is it that you would like to be treated. You would like to have a conversation with your sibling. And that's something that you can have a conversation and try and get them to where you would want them to be treated. Because what I understand is that you are treating them already in the most empathetic manner that you can already be treating them, right?
Yeah. Sometimes I just feel it for my parents as well.
I get you. I get you. Then probably having a conversation with them would help. Try and tell them what can actually work and why it is not working with the actual behavior that they're exhibiting right now towards their family. It is you, it's your parents. If all of you are feeling it could be improved, then I believe you can talk to them and give them few ways in which they can start showing up compassionate to you and your parents, and of course your caregiver.
Yeah.
I hope that works. I would love for you to go back and talk to them and come back and tell me in the next session, next Saturday, how it went for you and if that meant something to them. Thank you, Rajman, for that question. There's one question coming in the chat window by Anulesh. Anulesh asks, despite being compassionate, what is one supposed to do with corporate office politics? Wow, that's a brilliant question. So, Anulesh, we talk about emotional intelligence, staying compassionate. Let's also agree that while we talk about compassion, we are not just being too soft. It is the strength that we should be carrying through those office politics that we will all have. Now, think of it like a chess. Now, when you play chess, compassionate kindness can be the character, but the true skill that takes for us to uh, win in the chess is that strategic skill, right? We should be pairing the compassion that we all carry with the strategy that we will be able to overcome, understand politics, and stand up for ourselves firm is what actually truly matters. Start building strategic alliance if at all if you are in a work organization which brings a lot of politics inside. Start building strategic alliance. Not every battle is worth fighting. So you start using empathy to connect with people and look at how you can create alliance, align with people, and and identify those influencers, key decision makers, and the quiet supporters that you can have. Because when you start building those genuine and respectful relationships, you keep your circle very smart. And compassion doesn't mean you become friends with everyone. It means you're also being very fair and intentional. And you are in office, and you win your chess with compassion, but also with a strategic skill. One more thing is that if you feel that it is like a recurring office politics that is happening at work, you start observing, you start documenting, not by reacting initially, but you start looking at what is happening every day. And one day you will have your space to speak up firmly, speak up your truth, and you can defend yourself if it is coming down to a place where the politics is played on you. And and through all of it, staying calm, staying observant, and seeing what is happening is all it matters initially. But then when the time comes, you stand up really strong and you speak for ourselves. And compassionate doesn't mean it is naive or it's being too soft. It is also being kindness when we are completely self-aware of what is happening, and when the time really comes, you you stand up for yourself, and that is also compassion for our own selves. Okay, thank you so much for your response or guidance. Time to be more assertive as well. Yes, absolutely, Anulesh. So what I'm telling is let's build the stacks one over the other. Let's be compassionate, let's be empathetic. Let's also start showing up for ourselves in the most compassionate way that we can show up for ourselves as well. Thank you, Anulesh. Any other questions?
Thank you, Kavina. I think we don't have more questions, but you handled both the questions very well, and the whole presentation was very good. So thank you so much. And we
Thank
can,
you, Shabana.
yeah.